only thing we have to fear is
in war,
fear itself.
there is no substitute for victory.
Let us never negotiate out of fear.
We stand undivided, forever united, fighting hand in hand for the liberty we've earned, for glory and honor, for our sons and daughters, ever mindful of the lessons we've learned. Let the torch of freedom burn.
You found your way to the intersection of faith and politics. This is WallBuilders Live. Thanks for joining us today. I'm Rick Green here with David Barton and Tim Barton. We're looking at things from both a biblical and a historical point of view, and a lot of good news lately, guys. I know we have our Good News Fridays, but, man, I mean, since the elections, a lot of good folks got elected, a lot of good legislation going through this spring all across the country, and we're getting to find out more and more about folks getting elected at a young age with the right values, so I'm encouraged. There's some good things happening for the next generation.
There's some great stuff happening, and within that, you know, one of the things we've talked about in the last couple of years is we got to get our eyes off the federal level, because you get paralyzed when you look at that, because you can't do anything about President Obama's executive orders. You can't do anything about the fact Harry Reid wouldn't take up 387 bills the House passed. You can't do anything about the fact the U.S. Supreme Court gives you stupid decisions. Nothing you can do about that, and so we just kind of say, golly, it's out of my control. It's not out of your control. And the most effective thing you can do is at the local level, and that goes up to state rep level, state senate level. And we are seeing more and more stories, but people don't hear about them nationally, so, you know, they keep getting depressed by what they see nationally. But you're right, Rick, since the election, we get more and more stories, and we're finding these younger and younger reps. You know, we had the guy from West Virginia recently who was a state rep there who had already been through both the Air Force side or the Air National Guard and, you know, the Marine side, and he was down in Texas and, you know, intervened with that lady whose son was trying to kill her in Walmart. I mean, what was he, 23 or 27 or something of the sort? And,
I think he was late 20s, yeah.
Yeah, and already served in 2 branches and been in the legislature 4 or 6 years already. I mean, good stuff. And now we've got, who was we got a lady elected to, was it a 18-year-old elected in West Virginia this year? I mean, it's just, you know.
That's right. Yeah, I think she was 17 when she won the election, but she was going to be 18 by the time she got sworn in.
She could not vote for herself.
That's it, yeah. That's right. Couldn't vote for herself, but she wins the election.
But yeah, now she's old enough to hold the office. Absolutely incredible how we're seeing more and more people get involved, and especially young people that are getting a vision and a passion that want to make a difference.
And we got one of those today, 23-year-old newly elected state rep in Florida. This is going to be a fun interview.
We'll be right back. Jennifer Sullivan is our guest, new state representative from the state of Florida. Stay with us here on WallBuilders Live.
This is David Barton with another moment from America's history. Revisions today often assert that our founding fathers were atheists or agnostics or deists. This charge is not new. In fact, Patrick Henry was even called a deist in his lifetime. Clearly, no one could question his patriotism, but Henry was hurt that they would question his Christianity. Against the charge that he was a deist, Patrick Henry thundered, "Deism, with me, is but another name for vice and depravity. I hear it is said by the deists that I am one of their number, and indeed, that some good people think I am no Christian. This thought gives me much more pain than being called a traitor. Being a Christian is a character which I prize far above all this world has or can boast." Patrick Henry was quick to refute the charge of deism and to declare his open belief as a Christian.
For more information on God's hand in American history, contact WallBuilders at 1-800-8-REBUILD.
Let the torch of freedom burn.
Welcome back to the intersection of faith and politics. This is WallBuilders Live with David Barton and Rick Green. Thanks for staying with us. Our guest today, a new young state representative from the great state of Florida, Jennifer Sullivan. Representative Sullivan, thanks for coming on.
Thanks so much for having me.
Well, I have to have a selfish comment first of all. I noticed that your signs were green, which my last name's Green, and we always had green signs in my campaign, so I felt like I was part of your effort there in Florida. Good stuff.
Oh, well, thank you so much. You know, it was me because someone on Election Day actually came up to me and told me they voted for me just because it had green signs. So I said, hey, well, thank you. You know, I appreciate your support.
Well, you surprised a lot of folks, 23 years old. You've been involved for a while, though. This is not a new thing for you. I mean, you've been involved in the grassroots for quite some time.
I have, yeah. You know, I was knocking on doors and working on campaigns before I could even vote because I recognized from, you know, a young age that even though I couldn't vote, I could affect other people's votes. And so being a part of Team PAC Leadership Schools, which is a nonprofit organization that kind of trains young people how to be engaged in politics from a biblical worldview specifically, you know, I learned a lot of skills from being a part of those types of organizations that got me involved real young.
Now, Team PAC does this all over the country. Great organization. They go to state capitals across the country. It's kind of a younger version of our Patriot Academy that we do. I think, in fact, you can start as young as 13. How old were you when you started?
You can, yes. I was 15, I believe, when I went to my first class. I was 15 and then went back, skipped a year, and went back as an alumni, and then ended up travel staffing 2 years and going on to work for them, traveling the country, you know, teaching these conferences, which, you know, our classes across the nation are just starting in the spring right now. So it's not too late to go to www.teampac.com, pull up your state, and find a class that's near you.
Sounds like it did two very important things for you. One, obviously, made the connections and was able to get in and volunteer with folks, but also it sounds like it probably gave you a lot of the confidence to actually lead in not just the teen back world, but also in the real legislative world.
Absolutely. You know, and first and foremost, I have to thank my parents because they were the ones who really ingrained in me, you know, a strong faith, a love of family, a love of country and God. And they were the ones who really afforded me the opportunities to get involved in an organization like Team PAC. And not just Team PAC, but I was involved in 4-H for 9 years. And a lot of people, when they think of 4-H, they think of, you know, showing livestock, which I did as well. But it was actually 4-H Day at the Capitol that brought me to the Florida Capitol for the first time. That same year when I was 15, went to the Florida Capitol for 4-H Day at the Capitol, then went back 2 weeks later to spend a week there for Team PAC. And then 2 weeks after that, went back to serve as a messenger. My representative, you know, had met me at some of those previous events and asked if I'd come work for him for a week. And what's really neat is that representative who asked me to be a messenger for him and work is now my counterpart in the Senate. And so I get to be his representative, which is really cool.
That's very, very cool. Now, 4-H, do they call that 4-H Congress in Florida like they do here in Texas, or call it something different?
It's called 4-H Legislature, but
okay.
It's, you know, pretty much the same thing. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm a big fan. I think that's one of the best programs out there for getting young people. Not just the 4-H Congress part, but even just, you know, everything from the animals and showing and just the responsibility and the work ethic, and you get financial reward when you work. I mean, I just love it. 4-H does a great job, and you're a great example of what these programs can do for young people getting started. Tell us about your first session. I mean, I assume have you guys started yet?
We have, actually. I'm in Tallahassee right now, and we're going into our third week of committees. And so I sit on 4 different committees. And in Florida, as a House member, you can sponsor up to 6 bills. And so I've got 3 of my 6 bills filed, looking forward to filing my last 3 this week. My first 3 were already referenced to committees. Now, you know, I'm working with committee chairs to make sure they get heard, and going into this next week where I'm actually going to have the opportunity to sponsor a committee bill in my Ag and Natural Resources subcommittee. And so we're rocking and rolling. We waste no time. How
hard is it for you to overcome the age difference? I mean, is it do people, you know, do you have to really prove yourself to them first, or do they say, hey, you won an election, you're on an equal footing with us, or do they kind of wait a little bit to see if you really got the right stuff?
You know, I think it's a little bit of everything. You know, I think that everybody's been very welcoming, for sure. And the other representatives that have come into my freshman class, you know, they got to know me on the campaign trail. I had a unique grace in the sense that I had an open primary. So once I won my primary, we didn't have a general, which was great because it gave me 3 months to go knock on doors for other candidates and help them win. And I think that, people have been open-minded, which I've really appreciated. And, I'm up there like everybody else, and a lot of us are new, and we're all learning at the same time. And so I definitely think that there's a sense of, okay, what's she going to do? Is she going to work hard and all those things? But, I'm really grateful that the Lord has given me this opportunity. And clearly, without his favor, I wouldn't be here. And so I'm really excited about the opportunity to just work hard and serve my constituents. And, I recognize there's a lot I don't know, but I'm certainly willing to learn. And I think that's important. No matter what age you are, if you have the principles to keep you grounded, I think that's what leads to being a successful representative.
Well said. Representative Jennifer Sullivan is our guest. Stay with us. We'll be right back on WallBuilders Live.
This is David Barton with another moment from America's history. Shortly after the American Revolution, America had become the envy of the world. It still remains a wonder of the modern world as 219 years later, America has become the longest ongoing constitutional republic in the history of the world. What was the foundation upon which our founding fathers established this great nation? According to John Adams, the foundation was Christianity. John Adams declared, "The general principles on which the fathers achieved independence were the general principles of Christianity. Now I will avow that I then believed, and now believe, that those general principles of Christianity are as eternal and immutable as the existence and attributes of God." According to founding father John Adams, it was the principles of Christianity which formed the foundation for American government.
For more information on God's hand in American history, contact WallBuilders at 1-800-8REBUILD.
Let the torch of freedom burn.
Welcome back. Thanks for staying with us here on WallBuilders Live. We're talking to Representative Jennifer Sullivan, a new state rep in the great state of Florida, all of 23 years old and already taking the state by storm. Jennifer, we're seeing actually a trend of young conservatives getting elected, not just getting involved, but actually getting elected across the country. A couple of friends of mine in Oklahoma got elected at 21. There's a gal in West Virginia this year got elected at 18. I mean, it's happening, and every one of them that I've seen, including a young congresswoman from New York, all of these young people getting elected that I've seen anyway are conservatives. They're pro-life, they're pro-family, they come from a lot of times homeschooled like yourself. Is that the same trend you're seeing, and you think we'll see more of that out of your generation?
I do. I'm so encouraged because, like you said, they're rising up all across the nation. And I think there's so many groups like yours who have been investing in this younger generation. And now we're seeing, a generation of homeschoolers that are now old enough to get involved and run for office as well. So we're kind of seeing the fruit of many people's prayers and labor and kind of bringing up this new younger generation to be champions for Christ and to be active and engaged in all spheres of society. And I think it can be most clearly seen in politics because, it's rare that you have someone of a younger age that's running. But I'm really encouraged by it. And I think that it shows, that we're trying to send a message to our generation that's really had the expectations set so low that you really can step up and do great things. In a time period where general society will say, oh, the millennials are just an entire generation. They don't have a work ethic and whatnot. I think we've kind of been wrongly stereotyped that when you really get to know these millennials on a one-on-one basis, you recognize they have incredible passion and drive, and they can do great things. When someone comes behind them and invests in them and believes in them, because if you set the bar high, students, young people, they're going to want to reach that. And so I think we've seen these other great organizations kind of set that bar high for our young people, and now you see some of those young people who obtain that.
It's very, very encouraging, especially to older generations that are saying, hey, we're looking for someone to pass the torch to, and to see young people stepping up like you guys are is just phenomenal. Very, very exciting for the culture and the nation. How about the value system itself in your generation? How important is it for young people like yourself that are in leadership positions to win over your generation to the values that the nation was built upon?
I think it's incredibly important, especially when you have the media that plays the role that it does. You know, it's very interesting because the media is a small part of society, yet it affects so much of our worldview. You know, we have the public school systems, which I'm certainly not against public education in any way, shape, or form. But when you look at our university system, it's far leaning left. And so you have a lot of young people that go into school not quite knowing what they believe and why they believe. And when you're only giving them one side of the story, so to say, then we're turning out a lot of individuals who have just been told what to believe by the public school system instead of kind of looking back, well, why do I believe this? And what is right? And what is truth? And is truth relative? Because it's not. But yet we're growing up in this day and age of postmodernism where a lot of people believe truth is relative. So I think it's all the more important that we as young millennials know why we believe what we believe. For me personally, my faith defines what I believe, and being grounded and rooted in Scripture and those principles, I think is what will lead to the Lord giving you the opportunity to kind of step up and help lead your generation.
I love it. I love it. Love it. Great stuff. Very, very encouraging. Were there a lot of young people that helped out with your campaign as well?
Absolutely. It was incredible to see all the young people that came out of the woodwork, other Team Pack friends that even flew down to help. And we were all in this together because you know what? They're invested in their future as well. And I think they were excited about the opportunity to have someone represent them who has the same principles that they do and is understanding what it's like to pay for college rates and to live at this period of time in life. So I'm really grateful for them. We had over 100 volunteers, just a fantastic team. Without them, I wouldn't be here today.
What would you say to some of our listeners out there? I guess first, what would you say to older generations that have been losing hope and thinking America's too far gone, we've gone too far down the road to socialism, they've just given up? What would you say to give them hope in this new generation?
First and foremost, I would say that our God is a God of impossible tasks. He does the impossible. And so first and foremost, we need to remember who holds the future, and we need to seek him, and we need to be prayerful in that. And then secondly, I would say use the influence that they have by starting in their family, their children, their grandchildren. Share with them about their heritage. Share with them the founding of America and the fact that it wasn't meant to ever be a separation of church and state, but that we were founded on Christian Judeo beliefs. And use the influence they have with their own children and grandchildren to start with their family and then build out to serve in their church, to get involved themselves in local issues, local races. All politics is local. And so to them, I would encourage them to be engaged, to be active and involved, and to use the influence they have that starts in their own family and community.
Excellent word. All right, last word is to other young people that maybe are thinking, the system's too big, I can't make a difference, I'm only one person. What do you say to them?
You know, I would say that there was another House race that was won and lost by 2 votes. And so you're never too small, you're never too young to make a difference. Your voice, I believe, will never be as loud as it has the potential to be at this age because it's so unexpected. So I would say look at your area of giftedness, see where the Lord has blessed you, where your interests lay. Maybe they're not in politics, but there's an opportunity to be involved wherever you want to be. And so step up, be willing to take on leadership and responsibility. You know, our high school years are years that shouldn't be wasted away, but they should be used, you know, training those skills, being invested and involved in your community, and just being willing to be a vessel and use of the Lord. If you seek him, you know, he will give you the opportunity to serve and to make a difference in your community.
Fantastic. Love it. Absolutely. God bless you, Jennifer. Wish you absolutely a great legislative session and great service. We're praying for you to have great success and favor, and just excited about what you represent in your generation. Really appreciate your time coming on the show today.
Oh, well, thank you so much. And to all the millennials out there, if you ever have any questions, I'm only an email or phone call away. You can follow me on Twitter at Vote for Jennifer as well, or our Facebook page. I'd love to hear from you and be an encouragement to you any way I can. Thanks for having me on the show.
We're going to take a quick break. We'll be right back on WallBuilders Live. Have you ever wanted to learn more about the United States Constitution but just felt like, man, the classes are boring, or it's just that old language from 200 years ago, or I don't know where to start? People want to know, but it gets frustrating because you don't know where to look for truth about the Constitution either. Well, we've got a special program for you available now called Constitution Alive with David Barton and Rick Green, and it's actually a teaching done on the Constitution at Independence Hall in the very room where the Constitution was framed. We take you both to Philadelphia, the cradle of liberty in Independence Hall, and to the WallBuilders Library, where David Barton brings the history to life to teach the original intent of our founding fathers. We call it the Quick Start Guide to the Constitution because in just a few hours through these videos, you will learn the Citizen's Guide to America's Constitution. You'll learn what you need to do to help save our constitutional republic. It's fun, it's entertaining, and it's going to inspire you to do your part to preserve freedom for future generations. It's called Constitution Alive with David Barton and Rick Green. You can find out more information on our website now at wallbuilders.com.
Let the torch of freedom burn.
Welcome back to WallBuilders Live. Thanks for staying with us today. Rick Green back here with David Barton and Tim Barton. Guys, I know quote-unquote politicians can say things that they think you want to hear, but that girl sounded to me like the heart was right, the spirit was right. You talk about servant leadership. This is the model. We want more of this across the country.
Well, it really struck me. You know, she's very young, but she's principle-driven, and you could hear the principles come through. You could hear exactly what drives her, what the principles that motivate her. And I was reminded of what John Adams said way back in the 1760s, where that in serving in the legislature back then in Massachusetts, he was commenting on the difference between politician and statesman. And he noted that politicians are those who will compromise principles in order to advance or gain more power, gain more stature, gain more influence. He said, but statesmen are those that won't compromise their principles, even if it costs them the next election. And it struck me, you know, principles, if you're driven by principles, it doesn't matter what age you are. Now, if you're a politician, it does, because the more experience you have and the more cagey you become and the more knowledgeable you become about the system, more sophisticated. If you want to be a politician, age matters. But if you're going to be a statesman, age really doesn't matter. It's the principles you adhere to. And that's what struck me in listening to Jennifer is, you know, she's got her core principles down. She understands the principles even of what government's supposed to do jurisdictionally. And that's the kind of person that makes really easy decisions out of really tough things for politicians. It's really easy for statesmen.
You know, Tim, both of us work with young people, actually in the age range that Jennifer's in. We're seeing a lot more of this. I think there's a lot more like her coming up behind her, don't you think?
There are. And one of the interesting things she said is how she got involved very young with 4-H. At 9 years old, and then going to Teen Pack and so many things. We're seeing more and more young people that are getting involved and really enjoying the process. It's not something that mom and dad are making them go to these places and do things, but they have a genuine interest, and they have the understanding, the wisdom, the foresight to see that there's issues in our nation, and they want to make a difference. And so it's really neat to see young people that are very open to learning the process, to learning how they can make a difference. And then they catch a vision and they take this torch and they run with it. And so absolutely, we're seeing more and more of this in young people today.
And you mentioned vision. They're finding a sense of purpose. I mean, like you said, it's not mom and dad saying you got to go do this. They're finding that this is an area they can get passionate about and make a difference in.
Well, the other thing that she mentioned is she said she's 15 years old when she got started in Teen Pack, and then she started working in other races, et cetera. And so she's too young to vote, but she's not too young to have an impact on politics. And I was reminded that back when I was working with one of the national parties, national organizations, one of the things we did back then was we had what we called strike forces. And strike forces, we kept our eye on Senate races and governor's races and congressional races across the nation. And if someone was 2 weeks out and they were within a point of two or winning, they just needed a little boost to put them over the top, needed some extra impetus, what we would do is create strike teams. And we would take 100 kids And they were composed of homeschool kids and Christian school kids, Christian university kids, but about 100 of these kids. And usually it was about 70% homeschool and about 30% Christian college, Christian university, Christian schools. Take 100 kids, we would put them on the ground in a race for the 2 weeks before the race. And they would spend 10, 12, 14 hours a day making phone calls or standing on the corner holding signs or going door to door or whatever. And we found that when we put these kids in those races, we were winning 5 out of 6 races in those marginal areas where we were, within a point, either a point ahead or a point behind, needed to win. And so what she's doing, even at 15 years old, yeah, she's not getting elected then, but you know what? She's having a huge impact on the race of others. And I love the fact that she said that even after she had basically won hers in the primary, she spent the rest of that campaign season going to help other people win their races. Which that's a giving, that's a serving atmosphere attitude, not a selfish attitude. And that's just a lot of good stuff.
Well, and that goes back to this notion you mentioned that she's really in the category of statesman and not politician. And whenever what you are doing is all about somebody else, you are principle driven. So it's not about me and not accolades. And she really could have just rested and enjoyed the fact she got elected, and she could have been prepping and getting ready. And I'm sure so many things she needed to do, but she had such a vision for making a difference that she wanted to go help people that she believed were going to make a difference. And that really is the attitude we're seeing more and more in so many of these young people, that they're getting a vision of how they can make a difference and impact, and they're not just sitting on their hands. They're getting out and doing something.
And you could tell there's just a joy there. I mean, she's probably going to face some tough, challenges in the legislature, being younger and certainly being a conservative constitutional person. But, she's got the joy to be able to still be effective even when it's an uphill battle and stay in the fight. So everything that we're looking for in what we want to see in our servant leaders, we're seeing it come out, and as I mentioned with her, we've got young people in Oklahoma, West Virginia, all over the country that are getting elected. So this is very encouraging, guys. I think we're going to see a lot more of it in the years to come.
She's an answered prayer for the older generation, and she's an aspiring example for the younger generation.
Absolutely. It makes you feel good about passing that torch. You're not having to be worried about what you're passing it to in the next generation. Great stuff. Thanks for listening today, folks. You've been listening to WallBuilders Live.
We stand undivided.